we're live, and your name's still there.
Yes.
That is fantastic. For once, your name is still on the screen. God, I love that. That is so magnificent. Actually, we've had questions before we even went live. I don't know if you saw that. I don't know what's happened to my ticker banner. It decided not to. There we are.
There we go.
Going across the screen. So today's topic is what assets. I'll pop my tongue back in again. What assets are considered to have an intellectual property? And that's a really, 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 really great question. And I'm sure that with you, we will have the most amazing, most organic conversation, as we always do. That is why I adore having you on here with me, because when it's just me waffling, it's a different type of energy and it's a different type of content, to be honest. So when I have you with me, it's dynamic and it moves in all different directions, and we zoom out of a tangent, then we come back again. That's what I really, really like about these conversations. And I don't run a podcast because I don't understand how to, and I don't really want to. This is perfect for me. And I don't want to have to invite different people in every single time, because you, I know, and I understand, and I trust you.
Oh,
and
that's really kind.
That's why we're doing. I'm not saying it to be kind, Dave. I'm saying it because it's the truth.
Well, that's really, really nice. It's nice when you hear those words. You know, trust is a really, really, really big thing.
It is.
You know me. You're getting to know me, and vice versa. You know, we have many chats on WhatsApp and whatever else. With I must apologise. I'm just cleaning my glasses; they're a little bit dirty.
We all know that with glasses, don't we?
That's better. I can see you now. Yeah. You know, it's sometimes it can take a minute to build. Sometimes it can take a lifetime. And you know, when we're talking about really, really important issues like assets and how to protect them, we kind of come from two different fields, but we're both creative in the way that we think, and we're both really enthusiastic about trying to help others not get into trouble, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm learning every time we speak. I learn something new, and I think you do as well. And
oh yeah, absolutely.
This is kind of why we bond quite well. And you know, as long may it continue. There's so much up for debate. I mean, I sent you a video this morning of a YouTube video I was watching yesterday of a guy I follow on there, and it's right down my street. It's all about finance. It's all about you know, macro markets and NFTs and how they're going to be viewed. They along with blockchain is basically the future, because we've got all this crazy stuff happening with artificial intelligence. We were having a chat about this offline. I was playing around with a couple of AI tools that I used. I'm just thinking to myself, what I could do is generate loads of these, put them as an NFT, put them on OpenSea, sell them as mine, etc., etc. Because once they're generated, I've got a code, which is my proof that it belongs to me. But some of these platforms is a bit of a free-for-all. It doesn't matter who grabs what. So you can kind of, the way it works, you prompt it with an idea. So you'll type some stuff. So whatever it is, it could be, I want to have a Persian cat, I'll use your cat as an example, a Persian cat walking on the moon with an astronaut floating in the sky. And it will generate an image, something like that. And you go, oh, that's quite good. But everyone else can see, and they might go, well, that's really good. I'll take that, but put my thing on it. Now, the way I feel about that, I have absolutely no issue, because when that's done, I'll go, crikey, why didn't I think of that? You know, but there'll be others that will go, hang on a minute, that's not quite playing fair. But it's all about the terms and conditions that you agree to when you go on these sites in the first place. It's there. So if you want to make yourself open game, then so be it. If you're smart enough and you can generate a few and put them on a platform where it may be your intention to sell, or it could be for a non-monetary way of, look, this is the sort of work I can do for you guys and girls. Come and use me as a graphic designer or whatever the name of the game is. Then, you know, that's where the asset and the protection of it comes into a different field. Again, you're the expert in this, I'm not, but I just see a lot of creation. Every day I think, where's it going to stop? It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know, since the likes of Chat GPT and tools before that, these art tools, they're everywhere. And I can't paint. Honestly, I can't paint. I can't draw. Well, that's not strictly true. The only thing I can draw is there was a cartoon character that I used to read in the Beano called Dennis the Menace, and I can only draw his head. And my eldest son laughs because he's quite good with art, and he said, "Dad, I love the way that you can only draw that. You know, he's got not a perfect round, he's got a round nose, a goofy smile, spiky hair like I used to have mine, and a red and black jumper, and it was quite iconic. I used to do them all the time for the kids when they were younger because it's the only thing I could do. Now, my daughter's a good drawer. My eldest son's a decent drawer. My youngest one's just like me. He's got a really good imagination, but he can't put it in an art form. So AI tools for him and I are bloody brilliant. But, you know, for other people, it could be the devil's curse, can't it?
Sorry?
For other people, it could be the devil's curse. It could be threatening. So, you know.
And I think that because we're in that collective, creative collective networking group, a lot of them feel threatened by this development, you know. But I mean, with everything new, there's always a period where people are scared for their lives, more or less. This may be a bit me dramatizing it, but fact of the matter is, it's here. What are we going to do about it? From my perspective, as a legal person, we have to remember to edit it so that it still gets our thumbprint.
Yeah.
So that when you, I mean, it can be difficult when you create images and stuff and art and stuff like that, because I'm somebody who find it really difficult to write prompts for images to be created.
Yeah.
I find that really difficult. I don't know why, but it doesn't, I just don't get the results that I want. And I'm like, okay, this is stupid. You know?
Well, this is where, I mean, just going on a tangent, a while ago, before you and I met, I would use images of, say, Coca-Cola. It's an iconic brand. Everybody knows what the product is. So if I'm writing something about, I'm demonstrating on the power of advertising or brand or what have you, you know, it's quite easy to go to their website, grab their image, use it, put their web address in the middle, and just put a disclaimer. Look, you know, obviously these images aren't mine; they belong to Coca-Cola. Whether that's a LinkedIn post or a Twitter feed where you tag them in, you know, you're giving them the credit because you have to. You know, if you don't, it could land you in seriously hot water. I mean, I don't think for 1 minute, but I never know, the likes of those giants are really sort of that particularly bothered about people that are writing good stuff about them, because they probably won't see it anyway. But if they do, it's wise to have that sort of extra layer of protection from a personal point of view just there, because you just don't know. And I think if it was a terrible issue, LinkedIn wouldn't allow it, you know, and other platforms wouldn't allow it so much. However, you're right. If you've got that area where you want to put something, you go, right, I want to have an image, and in my head, I want it to look like this. And this happens to me too. And I'll go, type something, and it will produce something, and it will be nothing like what I had in my image, but it will actually be better.
Oh, for me, it's worse.
Yeah. Oh, is it? Okay. That is interesting. But the thing I like about this, it's a bit like I'm sitting in front of a graphic designer, and I'm saying to the graphic designer, okay, can you do me a logo? And I want the logo to have these colors in. I want to have this specific font. And this is the image that I'm trying to portray. Now, when I do that last bit, I stop. because I don't know how to do that very last bit, which is why I'm talking to the graphic designer. And we know people like John that does stuff like that, Lenny as well. So I would go, it's over to you because you've got those creative genes and juices and so on, and off they go and produce something, whether it's through Canva or A&O. I don't know what tools they use. Now,
they probably use some other creative. I doubt that they actually use Canva because they are professionals and they would probably use more like Illustrator.
most likely.
What's it called? Adobe Illustrator, something like that, because that's the tools that that type of business or industry uses. Canva is more for like people like you and me who want to have images to go along with our posts and on a day-to-day basis we don't necessarily have because we don't have the size of business that employs an in-house graphic designer. That's why people like us use Canva.
And
the AI tools.
That's kind of my point. Canva now have got AI tools. Adobe definitely have. We don't know is the thing, and to be honest with you, I don't actually care. It's the way I see things with creative people. You referred to the group that we belong with, and I agree with you. I think they've got some things that they're concerned about, which I understand. My view is this: it's not going away. It's actually going to get bigger and better and stronger and all the rest of it. So they need to think of how they can use those tools to not necessarily do things better, but maybe quicker, take away a lot of the stuff that takes a lot of work. I mean, I did a post yesterday with 20 prompts on LinkedIn about content creation. Now,
I saw that.
I recognize to a lot of people it's irrelevant. I'm not that bothered about that. I don't care about that. I'm just saying, I found these, I've used it, it's good. Use it if you want. If you're ignoring it, it's entirely your call. And I'm happy to share that because this is part and parcel of being on a networking group. We give more than we take. Well, that's the theory. Okay. So I had a load of that and I had some lovely comments and some people, a mate of mine, he put some briefing there saying, crikey, this is a lot of questions. And Steve has got a point. But you don't ask them all at once. You can ask a few of them. This is how you generate. So you get to the bit and go, that's it. That's mine now. I can now use that. Because as you've been teaching me, when it's up here as an idea, there's not much you can do until you start putting it on paper, whether it's a digital paper or paper, or say it out loud.
Yeah, and I mean, even from my perspective, when it's something that is in your head, we can't protect it. But the minute you either verbalize it or you put it on paper or you give it some form of physical shape, for want of a better expression, then that's when we can start looking at how can we protect it. And then that's when we can consider, is this an asset that actually has intellectual property connected with it? Because if it's something that's generic, the answer is no.
So if there's an occasion, and this must have happened, I'm sure it's happened many times, where that idea comes out in one part of the world and then thousands of miles away, the same idea comes out at the same time. How does that get managed?
So
let's give a hypothetical example. Coca-Cola, the day before, has this idea and then produces said idea. And at the same time, we'll give it Hong Kong Coca-Cola in China or whatever, have exactly the same idea at exactly the same time. They don't know about it and so on, and they want to sort of obviously get the ball running. So how would that work in the grand scheme of things?
So the thing is, ideas, we think that ideas stay inside our heads. They don't. We think that our thoughts stay inside our heads. They don't. So the thing is, when you want to create something, sorry about that. When you are inspired to create whatever it is that you're inspired to create, make sure that you act on the inspiration so that you start to more or less take it to market. The difficult thing is, when do you start to protect it? And in many cases, people take their things to the market before they start protecting it, because they have to learn whether or not it is something that they can make money from, which I totally get. So with regards to Coca-Cola, so the thing is, they have a recipe for this particular drink, and they have refined it, as far as I understand, over a certain period of time. And what happens now is that people get licensed to create the same item, for want of a better word, the same product, but there is a license agreement in place to ensure that it lives up to the standards of this company.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways that you manage it. When somebody has something that is confusingly similar to what you do, if none of it's registered as a trademark, then it's difficult to protect it from my perspective, because there has to be value to it. It has to be unique. And whether two people get the same idea. I mean, I know, for instance, that Liz Gilbert, who wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love, that's now also a film, or it got made into a film, not now, but some years ago, it was made into a film. And she has spoken about an inspiration to write something that she had. She never wrote that piece, but she spoke to somebody else about it. And interestingly, the other lady kissed her full on the lips. And that lady then went and wrote that piece, which is really interesting. And as far as I know, Liz Gilbert has no issue with that, because she hadn't done anything with it. She wasn't inspired to take it further, you see. So it's about acting on the inspiration that we get, so that it doesn't just float around there in the ether, so that it gets like gets a physical shape or a form or expression somehow. I mean, a painter is inspired to paint something, and a filmmaker is inspired to turn something into a book. And sometimes with books, you get different iterations, like Little Women, for instance. I think there are 3 different iterations of it now. And what they do is, each of the film directors, they give their own twist to it and tell the story in a way so that it fits into, because the latest Little Women film, it certainly has intellectual property and it has value. And what she's done is she's actually taken both of Louisa May Alcott's books, Little Women and Good Wives, and created that into a one film instead of 2. I don't know that anybody's ever made the other book into a film, but she's taken content from both of these and made one film out of that. And that's a really interesting twist. And because she's done that, she's created a different twist to the same plot.
Yeah.
And in doing so, it has intellectual property, and it has value, and it has relevancy. And that's one of the ways also to go about it. And I think that we are moving away a bit from what you said. The original question was, what happens when 2 people are inspired on different sides of the globe to create the same thing? I think that for it to be completely identical is going to be really difficult because no people think the same way.
I think you're right, and thinking
Unless
forward.
Unless it's a question of plagiarism, that's different.
Yeah.
Plagiarism.
There's no coincidence. Things happen for a reason. We both agree and understand that. Things can be. It's all about timing, isn't it? So if somebody just happens to do the same thing at the same time, separated by thousands of miles in terms of distance, but their journey could have been equally as long. They could have thought about it from January the 1st this year, and then today they decide, I've made enough out of this. I'm now going to look at putting a copy on it, trademark, whatever, and off they go as such. But as the globe is getting bigger in terms of population, we're 8 billion on this planet, and 2, 5, 10, whenever you use time, that'll probably be 10, 12, 15. The chances of that happening, I don't know whether it increases or decreases, who knows, but on the grand scale of things, somebody has to come first, but it depends on how and when it's registered. And again, if they both happen to try and register the thing at the same time, you have to get one that arrives before the other. That's just the way that time works.
Yeah.
So,
this is where actually I think that the blockchain would help us a lot.
I was just about to say, do you think that would be a really good way of sorting out who come first? Yeah.
Yes, I think so, because if I understand blockchain correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand blockchain is that the minute that you put something on there, it creates a timestamp for that. And because of that, it'll be much easier to then say, okay, well, this actually came first. I'm really sorry, but you can't do that thing now. I mean, it's like back in the day when I was registering a trademark for a client of mine in Denmark, and suddenly he came to me saying somebody else is trying to use one particular bit of what I was registering for him as a trademark, because it was quite a long thing that and in there was one particular element that this other business was using. And so what happened was that I said to him, can you please furnish me with all the information regarding when you started using this, how long, where you've been using it, all evidence that you've been using this for quite a while. And he complied with that. And so I said, okay, let me handle this matter for you. And he also gave me the contact details of the other business. And I then contacted them and saying, look, my client has been using this for quite a while. I'm in the process of actually registering this as his trademark. So basically stop doing what you're doing. And so because I was his legal advisor or his counsel, they couldn't very well ask me for advice. So they had to go away and find somebody else. And so 2 weeks later, I got a reply explaining that they had done that. They had gone and gone search for legal advice elsewhere. And because of all the proof that I had submitted with the letter, they then were told that I was in the right and they were in the wrong, and that because of the nature of their business, everything hinged on that particular word. So that meant that their dream was completely shattered because they hadn't done due diligence. And due diligence is so important when we want to ascertain what kind of asset has intellectual property.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do due diligence, then you risk that what you've been working towards gets completely shattered because it hinges on that particular thing and you can't think of another way of making it work. So there are so many ways to consider these things.
I think as well, unless you've been on Mars for the past 10 years or whatever, we are really heading towards the next stage of the digital world.
Yeah.
In time, we won't have physical money, it'd be worthless. It's now, but we won't have it. It's a pain. You know, you walk down the road, you drop a £10 note on the floor, someone else picks it up. All of a sudden, it belongs to them. Not particularly right, but that's how things can work. So with the way that we pay for transactions now, we've got these bits of plastic, or we've got all that information on our phones now, which is digitally transferred to the other side. Now, to get that process done in real time, for us as a consumer, we walk into said shop, buy things, put it in our trolley, go and pay, walk out, we own the goods. Really, we don't, because the shop still has to go through the payment process and use all these third parties and so forth. And that in real time can take a few days to clear. So when you've got a decentralized organization that relies on blockchain, the most well-known one, of course, is Bitcoin. You don't have those issues. You know, you walk in, you go, I want that. I'm going to transfer this as my proof of ownership. You do that, you walk away with the stuff. And I think the way that most companies are going to be looking, and most organizations are going to be looking now, is if we can speed up the process and also make it more secure, we need to look at an asset like blockchain. How do we transfer things come the time when that happens? And the answer's already here. It's called smart contract. And that's why Ethereum is here. So an NFT or a token, whatever way that's devised, will be the quickest way of doing things, because things won't get lost. But over and above that, there's no controlling body over the top that's owning it all and saying, I can change the rules as and when I like, because that's no good. That's broken. We all know this. So that, when it was written back in the day, when Vitalik had his idea of, who came out with Ethereum, that would have been an example at the time of an intellectual property, because he had the thought of, I've seen how Bitcoin works, I'm now going to rewrite it in a way that other things can be done, because Bitcoin was and still is quite limited in terms of its utility. So other assets that you know could be intellectual, let's look at like a new way of building a house. For whatever reason, you want one to float on the river, and there are houses that do that. I'm not sure I'd live in them, but you know, stilts, whatever way you want to put it, you can have a raft underneath it. But essentially, that's a really way out concept. But someone will come up with a really secure way of doing it eventually and go, yeah, actually, it's quite straightforward. I want to live in the middle of the sea. I don't want to be on an island because I like going on a boat daily. I quite like all that. That, I suppose, when it's in the head, is that idea. And once it comes out on paper or verbally, that needs protecting. Because if someone else sees that and go, crikey, I was only just thinking of that, they could jump in and have a steer. So that would be, I don't know, an asset that would have intellectual property. I don't know. That's that's a discussion perhaps for another time. But there are so many intuitive, innovative ideas out there, and you just think to yourself, I mean, I do. I think I wouldn't want to be, well, it'd be good to be in your shoes because it represents a lot of opportunity for you as a business. But then you've got all the work and bits and pieces that you have to do and all these other considerations. Things are moving a lot quicker now than they've ever been. You know, you only have to go into supermarkets. The big news at the moment is they're all running out of food and so on. They're blaming Brexit. I've never heard such nonsense. It's bad planning. It's all about bad planning. So the buyers and the people behind the giants like Sainsbury and Tesco and all the rest of it, they haven't done their jobs right. They need to get off their arse and do it, you know. But when you've got smaller people like we're talking with that are either shit scared of doing something because they don't want to get sued, or they don't want to lag behind and get overtaken by someone else, it's really important these guys and girls speak to the likes of yourself, because you can give them that guidance and advice. Actually, this would be considered, and here's the why. You know, and I think there's not enough people like you in this world that will do that. You know, I'm not sure about the protocol and the background of your job, your actual role, what you do in the grand scheme. I don't need to, because I know, like, and trust you as well. So, you know, that's the way that we both work. And if I ever come across anybody that wanted to get involved, irrespective of where they are on the planet, I'd say, Celeste, she's your girl. Go and talk with her. She deeply understands this. I have a vague idea of how it works, but, you know, I don't need to. It's like the same in reverse with what I do.
Yeah, exactly. I have a vague idea of, you know, of what it is that NFTs and blockchain are. I can't say that I'm a specialist in it, but it's not going to stop me from trying to venture into it, because I find it interesting. And if I will be able to create NFTs or not, we will have to wait and see. But I find it interesting.
There's what I'm finding out with NFTs. You can buy albums from an artist, whether it's Queen, the Rolling Stones, whoever. You can buy digital art. You can buy access to things like airline flights, technically, and certainly concert tickets with these little add-ons. That's one of the benefits they can do. So what they're doing at the moment is they're gathering a lot of traction with fan base and provider of said product, i.e. the music industry. And you've even got the likes of Starbucks, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, all the brands that are in the high streets in terms of the clothing sector are also jumping on this, because they all realise the one thing that we all do is, as soon as we open our mouths, we're making a contract. I will be there at such and such a time, give or take. That's my words, you know. In the city in London, in the financial sector, your word was your bond. I don't know if that still is the case. In the insurance market, it was governed by the pen and paper, and that's why Lloyd's of London's around, you know. So there's all these different variations of what a contract is, because everything that we say, it goes back to that. The reason why we're doing stuff is because one day we woke up, we said something, whether we wrote it on a piece of paper, typed on a document on Word or what have you, or we spoke with somebody about it. That's when that ball started to roll. So intellectual property is actually going to get even bigger.
It is, and it's never going to go away.
No.
And that's the magnificence of it for me. You know, it's getting bigger and it's expanding, but it's about having the understanding and trying to get everybody to come along with us and say, look, this is what's happening now, and we want you to understand the value of what it is that's my perspective. I want you, because my mission statement is protect what you create before it's too late.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because I know that what most people create takes time and effort. You know, I had a mother who was a ceramist, and this is a really, really excellent way of learning that something that you create takes time and effort and energy and love and finances, because you can't create anything as a ceramist if you don't have the money to pay for the clay. And you have to have a kiln that you can fire it in and all these kind of things. So I grew up. She also had her own business, by the way. By the way. So I've had a lot of influence from my mother to learn and understand. And this is unique for me because I know and understand the things that they go through to create their creations. And I know and understand their language because I heard it inside my mother's womb as a fetus. We hear things already as in the fetus state. So I've heard these things from before my from conception. While I was in my mother's womb, I heard about these things. And growing up, I experienced her having people who would copy what she had created, and she did not think that she could protect it. And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Because I hated not being able to say, look, we can do it. And even though after I had studied the law, she would still think, because I am number two, I'm not the oldest child, I'm number two, right? So for some reason, that would almost invalidate what I said. So, I mean, she created this beautiful, beautiful little fireplace because she had a tiny summer house, and she wanted a tiny fireplace to fit in that space. You can't just go down and buy a normal fireplace because it would be too big, and the result would be that it would be too bloody hot and you wouldn't be able to stand it. So you needed a tiny. She then sat herself down and created this beautiful thing. And her husband, not my father, her husband, he made sure that he figured out how to get it produced and set it into production for her. But what then happened was they took out a contract where the person who wrote the contract wasn't paying proper attention. First of all, they didn't know jack shit, and I'm swearing here, about intellectual property, all right? They didn't know anything about that. Plus, despite having studied the law, they completely fucking forgot to put in a clause to stipulate what would happen in case of breach of the contract. That meant that contract wasn't worth the paper it was written on.
Yeah.
My mother and her husband were tied to that contract for 2 fucking horrible years. They couldn't do anything, despite it being a contract that was written for them for the purpose of somebody selling it for them. There was a lack of understanding of intellectual property, and there was a lack of understanding how a contract can actually bite you on the bum if you haven't got the right wordings in there and the right clauses in there.
And this is where...
And nobody thought to ask me, you see. I had finished studying, maybe I was actually studying the law by then, but nobody thought to ask me, even though they knew that intellectual property is my thing. They never asked me. And it still frustrates me to this day, as you can hear, because if they had just stopped and thought, okay, let's actually ask the one person in the family who loves intellectual property, maybe we could get a contract that would actually work in our favor.
Sometimes, the stuff that's so close to you is the hardest to see.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case with what happened there. I was listening to you and I was thinking, what have I got that I truly value? And it's really people. I don't have any high-level possessions. I don't own a house. I don't own a car. So I'm sort of quite flippant about property because I don't have much. But I've owned the kids. I've got 3. They're all adults, and I have this thought process where if they got into trouble, I would do come what may to try and help them. I would, find a way to resolve whatever the issue is. And people that value their businesses and their ideas really should adopt that thought. Yes, things come at a cost. Listen, money comes and goes. You'll lose money, so will I. I have. I've got money back. It's the way the world is. It's not nice, but we work out how to get around that situation. But if we don't act quick on protecting something that can stop us getting to that position in the first place, like we go back to the Coca-Cola idea, we're stuffed. We would have to have a rethink and do something either completely different or something that's similar that doesn't get you into legal hot water. In an ideal world, if we all got up and all did our thing and all did things right, there would be money going around. No one would earn more, no one would earn less. We'd all be living and existing, which would be great, especially for people that haven't got enough compared to people that have got more than enough. But it doesn't work like that. There's always going to be that you sit on a seesaw as kids. One of them's bigger than the other, and the bigger one will flip the other one up in the air, technically speaking, because it's heavier. And it's the same out there in the big wide world. So if you've got an idea and it gets heavier and heavier, you actually need more protection. So they should come with people like you and say, look, we need this wrapped up, help us, done. But I'm one of these people, maybe there's not enough of us, like, if I'm not sure, I don't give a rat's ass if it sounds stupid. I'll stick my hand up and ask. Because if I don't know anything, if I don't know the answer to the question, let's ask the question. If I've got an idea, yeah, but what? Right, I better find out about that. So I never say to anyone, I think it's going to be this. Yeah, just use that. You'll get away with it. I will have to do this. Look, don't know the answer. Let me ask someone who does. Whether that's IP or another. I would go and find someone who knows the answer to that question. And until such times, I won't give this person an answer. But there's not many people like me that think like that. There's many people that will go, yeah, it's this. And they'll forget what they've said. And then later on, when they're in legal hot water, trouble begins. So that goes back to the question on the ticker tape below about, what assets are considered to have intellectual property. Think hard before you open your mouth first, because that could be the start of either a very good journey, one that will sort of start and peter out, and that'll be down to the energy dynamics of the originator, or it could be the worst nightmare in your life if you don't think about your actions. And in an ideal world, we should all do that, but we don't. And that's why we've got people like you to protect us or help us get protected. So, as this world is getting more digitalized, and as new ideas are landing on the plate by the minute now, it's not by the day, it's quicker than that.
I would say by the second, but that's
the area is vast. The area is vast. Yes, all right. At the start, there's going to be some tiny pockets, but they'll get bigger, and they'll get bigger, and they'll get bigger, and they'll get bigger. And then all of a sudden, they'll need that protection, because we get it to a degree with our banks. We get it with all these insurance products and things like that. But one of the biggest purchases one will make is buying a house, and the other one, which is either pretty close, or the other one, which is pretty close or bigger, is when you buy a company, or when you start to make a company. Because yes, it might not cost you much money in the early days, but what it will cost you is time, and time has a price.
Yeah, because you can't get it back. Once time has been spent, you cannot get that time back. Yeah. It's not possible.
So there are a lot of areas to consider when you look at your field. I'm trying to think, to answer the question that you're asking, what assets are considered to have an intellectual property? What assets don't have that?
That's another way of looking at it, because you think about day-to-day things. A pen, it has intellectual property because somebody has decided on the way that it looks. This is just an ordinary pen. This is a silver fountain pen, and it has a particular shape and look and feel to it. So yes, that has intellectual property as well. Here is my phone. Yeah, it has intellectual property. My hat, somebody got educated to become a milliner and created this hat. It has intellectual property, and so I think that it's about realizing that we cannot turn around without our eyes landing on something that has intellectual property, without touching something that has it, because it's everywhere. Everything has intellectual property. It's just a matter of how much and what kind of value you attach to that. Because when you look at these two, this is cheaper than this. I bought this when I was working in a fountain pen shop in Copenhagen. I fell in love with it because of its shape and because it's silver. And I've had somebody engrave my initials on it.
Can you see that? Yeah, I can see that. Wow.
Because I had one and it got stolen from me, so I got a new one. But obviously, if it had been this one, I wouldn't have bothered because I'm not going to have somebody engrave my initials on this. It doesn't mean nearly as much to me as this does.
No, but there's also like a counter case. Just again thinking about branding. Many moons ago, I worked for a business that supplied construction sites with plant, so diggers and all the cranes and bits and pieces like that. And they had a load of pencils that were engraved with the company name that they used to give out. So yes, I sort of see your point. The actual monetary value of the thing is sort of irrelevant. It's I got the idea first. I want to get in there, blah blah blah, and it was quite groundbreaking back in the day. I mean, I'm talking nearly 40 years ago. Now everyone does it. You know, you can get that done. You can have mugs made, pens, the whole 9 yards. Pencils are used in construction because they, you know, when it rains, they can still write on paper and read what they've written. But with all this in mind, people have got this, I don't know, this misconception about going back to the pen and the Bic with the hole in the cap, and there was a reason why that was for the, you know, if kids swallowed them, they would be less likely to choke and all the rest of it. Great idea. I dare say that was patented and trademarked and everything else. It would be daft if it wasn't. But people,
I dare say it was.
Okay, but you know, it would be incredible if that is the case. But
I mean, that they protected it. That's what I meant.
Yeah. But when you've got you know, more elementary things and things that are a little bit more sophisticated. But having said that, a pen is something we've all learnt to use when we've gone through school into the, you know, senior years over here and perhaps worldwide. I used to hate it when I worked in an office and I used to put the pen down, go and get it again after I'd done something. It had gone. Someone had taken it to use. And they said, "Oh, I've only borrowed it." Well, don't remember you asking me. You know, yeah, but I just assumed you. Well, don't assume, it's mine. Can I have it back? Because I need it. You know, yeah. And technically that's theft. I know it's a real sort of.
Technically, it is theft.
Yeah. So, you know, whether that comes into the realms of IP again is another interesting matter. You know, I'm really struggling to think of things that do not have IP attached to it in some shape or form.
I mean, look at something so mundane as these little babies.
Yeah.
Somebody has had to have the idea of creating them in the first place. Yeah. And then they have actually gone and evolved it into it being on 100% recycled paper, because that wasn't the case to begin with.
Yeah. And that's technology, isn't it? You know, you look at Post-it notes like you've got there, Celeste. You look at the Hoover, you know, and the counter argument is just because somebody's protected something and got it trademarked and everything else, got all the full ticket, if you like, it doesn't stop somebody else coming along with a similar idea but a different take on it. So you look at Hoover and you look at a big brand like Dyson, where he said, well, it's all about the filtration system, how it purifies and all this sort of thing. I mean, I don't really understand the technology, but a lot of people do, and that's why they'll pay, you know, 2, 3, 4 times the amount to a conventional Hoover, because they see the value in it, you know. And you'll get others that are the flip side.
And actually, I do believe Hoover is a registered trademark, or was, yeah. And by just saying Hoover for a vacuum cleaner, you're actually misusing their trademark. Yeah. So you should say vacuum cleaner instead. Yeah. If when you're comparing the two and letting people know what it is that they do, because
but you're right.
But no, you Hoover, then you're misusing the trademark. You and interestingly enough, when you say that you're Googling something, you're not misusing it because Google want you to say that. That's the interesting thing. But in under normal circumstances, I wouldn't want you to say that you're Grand RPRing something because Grand RPR is my trademark. So I want you to say that you have come to me to have me register your trademark. That's the difference.
Yeah. That's interesting about Google, because I don't really use it that much other than the YouTube side of things. But when I'm searching for something, I'm actually very careful about, I use Opera, Brave, U.com, Bing, and a few others. I just think to myself, I'll just do a search for that, right? So I've changed how I talk, even recently, because of what's gone on. But it's interesting, like you say, with hoovering. But people have got so institutionalized with this now. It's an old word. It's an old company. It's an old system. Not many people really want to go out and buy a Hoover as such with the old bag that they're to change. It's damn inconvenient. And when you've got companies like Dyson, and Hoover have probably made improvements on what they do. I don't even know if they're still around, but it's just sometimes these phrases stick with us as well. And people are either being so careful about saying the wrong thing or going gun-ho and going, I don't really care. What's going to happen? It's an interesting subject. It really is.
Yeah. And I was just trying to look in my book to see. So here are some examples of trademarks that are no longer registered trademarks: aspirin, escalator, flip phone, laundromat, zipper, thermos, Walkman, and cellophane. These are no longer upheld as trademarks because they have become genericized and they've been used in derogatory ways, which means that people like me cannot uphold the trademark anymore. And that means that it has lost its value. And that means they don't generate the same kind of income anymore from these words, these previous trademarks. They have died a tragic death.
That's interesting. Is that because, I'll use the cellophane example just as a for instance, is that because some of those products are perhaps not as used in the same way that they were, or they've had to change things because of environmental issues? Looking at cellophane, I would imagine there's an obscene amount of oil that goes into those things. I don't know.
It's to do with that. It's got everything to do with the wrong usage of the trademark.
Okay.
So that's why when you create something, and as I said, Google is the best example because they don't mind people saying, I'm going to Google this, or I've Googled that, or they do not mind. Whereas Hoover, they are very much trying, and Xerox, they don't want you to say that you're Xeroxing things. They want you to say that you're taking a photocopy on a Xerox machine.
Right.
And Hoover will want you to say that you are vacuum cleaning your house with a Hoover machine or a Hoover vacuum cleaner. They do not want you to genericize the term, which is what happens when stuff like that goes into the public domain and dies a tragic. Let me read about dilution. When your trademark has been successfully registered, it's your duty to actually uphold your rights to it. This means that you are obliged to use it for the intended purposes and also fight off infringers. If you do not live up to these rules and regulations, then your precious trademark dilutes or degenerates. Dilution in the world of trademarks has to do with acts related to the trademarks that weakens its uniqueness. This applies to the world-famous trademarks that are instantly recognizable, such as Nike and IKEA. The trademark dilution therefore stands for the proposition that some marks are so well known that they preserve protection beyond the standard of likelihood of confusion analysis for determining a trademark infringement. The degeneration of a trademark means that the trademark owner has neglected to react whenever anybody was infringing upon their trademark, and thus the trademark has become a generic term in everyday language and is available for everybody to use in that manner. When a registered trademark is obtained, there are certain criteria that have to be met on a regular basis, such as the duty of use. This also means that the marketing connected to the trademark has failed to a certain extent. I have found this rather humorous example of someone who does use trademarks correctly, and I'm quoting here. What a bad day I had yesterday. I had just filed an important brief in a trademark case, so I went to the mall after work. I was blithely proceeding down the escalator, playing with, and there was a registered R next to that, playing with the new yo-yo, and there's a TM next to that I had just purchased. But in the briefest moment of inattention, while pondering a fine point of trademark law, my yo-yo TM string got caught in the zipper, registered trademark symbol of my nylon TM jacket. So that's how you actually have to do it. Every single time you are writing something with Grand IPR, you need to put the registration R next to it, which I do. Whereas if you don't, that's when it becomes diluted, and that's when you lose the value and the uniqueness of what you've created, and you do not want that.
So with Google as a trademark, you can't trademark Googling, or can you?
I don't know. I haven't looked it up, to be fair.
Because that's an adjective.
It is an adjective, isn't it? So, but they can. I don't know exactly how it works, but they have actually allowed that to happen in some manner.
I think with them, it's not in their interest because it's a generic term, and it's probably, they want people to naturally assume they're the go-to, because they are at the moment. You know, they control 80% of searches worldwide, maybe more. I don't know the exact figures, but that would be perhaps a reason why not to do it. Because again, I'm no expert, but I'm just thinking, yeah, Googling is one of the ones. Vacuuming is an act of you cleaning a floor with a device. So again, that's an action there. The vacuum cleaner.
That's different from Hoover, because the Hoover is the registered trademark, whereas I don't think vacuum is a registered trademark.
Yeah.
But so when you vacuum clean something, that's an act, and you're doing with the Hoover.
So if you've got a Hoover
or the Dyson, you can still vacuum clean with the Dyson, can't you?
So if you've got a Dyson, which we have, right, and we're cleaning the flat, and we're using the Dyson to do so, the generic term is, I'll do the hoovering up. I'm not using the Hoover. I put the ing at the end always, because that's how we talk.
But that's correct use of their trademark, and they will not want you to do that. They will want you to say that you are vacuuming your flat with your Dyson machine.
Now here's the thing, and because they haven't got eyes everywhere, it's very difficult for them to enforce that. And I'm not sure if that's their design, but what they don't want is other companies to come on board and produce Hoover #2. I think that was the original reason why they sort of wanted to protect their brand, because at the time it was huge, you know, and it still is.
Yeah.
So it's interesting in terms of what one says in normal conversation in a household, where they're not so interested in that per se, but if the person in the household decides to make a company and calls it Hoover too, yeah, there's an issue there, because it's so very close to what they've got, it would absolutely get blocked. You know, it just wouldn't happen. But there are a lot of people that, and myself included, that have this grey area, thinking, right, oh, can I say that? Can I do this? Can I do that? I mean, I'm looking at my bank cards. I've got Visa, MasterCard, but with different brands on top of it. So when my statements come in each month, I just use a generic term. Oh, I've got to pay the credit card bills or what have you. I don't refer to them as Barclaycard, Tesco, whatever it is that I've got. And I don't even call them Visa or MasterCard. It's just a general term there. But there's a reason why there are those two businesses. You know, the logos are distinctly different. The way that they act are identical, more or less. You know, there are means of paying for something and getting a credit. Banks are the same. Whether they've got slightly better terms or not is neither here nor there, but it's the way that they do things, which is like a standard. Insurance is the same, and so on and so forth. So these big codes,
they have to adhere to certain things as well.
Yeah.
And there are not many law firms that have their name of business as a registered trademark, and that's how I'm different, because this is my trademark. And the
so
only
why would a
circle was because I had this banner created before I had it registered as a trademark. That's the only reason it's not there.
So why do law firms who really should know better not have their stuff protected in that way?
It's interesting that you say that they should know better, because just because they've studied the law doesn't mean that they're specialists and understand the intellectual property.
I sort of disagree with that, not because of the specialist bit, but a business should know better. They're a business, so they really do need to look at doing things like that, because if another law company comes along and copies exactly what they do, the brand, the name and everything else, and let's say it's sort of UK, America, or the other way around, it doesn't really matter, all of a sudden they got egg on their face. And then, to me, that would like to take these people on in terms of, oh, I need your services for whatever. Let's say they do, I don't know, let's say they're specialist in crime, all right? And they've got another company that does exactly what they do, similar looking, they get the trademark in first and gazumba. I'm thinking, well, you're not very credible, because you should have thought about protecting your own business in the first place. It's perception, and I think that's what I'm getting at. So people that, from the outside like me looking in, will go, well, they're in the legal sector. It's massive, it's broad, I know that. It's like finance is the same. But they should know better, because they've got intelligent people that are running those companies that started it up. They should be thinking, right, now we've got to the stage of X. To get to Y and Z, which is protection and fulfillment for the future, let's protect our product, our brand, and so on. And I find
in many cases, when you look at solicitors' business names, the business name or their trading name is oftentimes the surnames of the people who founded it, and often they just trade as that, and that's how they do it. They don't. I can't tell you why they don't take out a registered trademark for it, because I can't answer you, because I'm not inside their head.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know from my perspective, because I'm an intellectual property specialist and I specialize in trademarks. On top of that, I knew I had to have this as a registered trademark. So that's what I do. That's why I registered the trademark. They don't necessarily do that. They just trade as solicitors and use surnames for that.
Yeah, that's interesting. But my throwback is this: Tesco is two people's surnames merged, similar difference. It's just interesting where I use this term a lot, try and practice what you preach. So if you're in the area of law, whether it's a specific area or general or what have you, it would be prudent for you to sort of look at going through those stages at some point. And yeah, you got a point about, people's surnames being part of the business, but eventually they can change. It can change, and someone else can have the exact same. If you were called Smith and Jones Solicitors LLP or what have you, it's highly likely that could be copied again by someone else, because Smith and Jones are two very common surnames.
Yeah, and it's generic.
Yeah.
And when it's generic, we can't protect it. So they would have to come up with something different. I mean, there are law firms that don't have the surnames of the people in it as their trading name. Yeah. I've seen different names on LinkedIn. And so it's just a question of do we want to protect this as a trade? Do we want to protect this business that we've created with a trademark? And I mean, there are even businesses, I mean, even law firms that do training for other solicitors or people who have studied the law. I mean, when I was in Denmark, I would traipse around from event to event, not every single week or every single month, but there would be certain events that I would go to, and they wouldn't have a trademark. They would put their trading name onto everything. You know, they would have notebooks with their names on. They would have pens with their names on, like all the merchandise that we spoke about earlier.
Mm.
But not necessarily have it registered as a trademark. Why they haven't done that, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I would have done it if it was me. You know, let me see if I've got just a sec. I've got these different things here that I have put my trademark onto just because I can. It's merchandise, you know. So, oh, got the wrong thing here. Very clever. I've got these little cards, you know, that I sometimes use to write things on.
Yeah.
And what have you got there? You've got my trademark on it, and you've got my coloring. This post-it notes again, but different size, a massive size. And I'm not using this at the moment. So this is how it arrives.
Yeah.
It arrives with a tiny version of it so that you can see what is. So you're meant to take off the first one and not use that, and that's fine. But this is just to show you that merchandise, if you have a trademark that is registered, why not just put the trademark on it and show that you protect what you create? I've done this because I'm trying to showcase that I do what I preach.
Well, also, I suppose it's important because it helps, you know, brand exposure, if for want of a better word.
Yeah.
You know, it seems, you know, your logo is instantly recognizable, as are a lot of brands. And you know, the more you sort of show people, the more it sinks in. So there's another case to get some trademarks sorted out. And I mean, is there, in your opinion, an ideal time when someone would get to that point where they go, right, I got to this level now, I need to look at getting my stuff protected? Because as you said earlier, from day one, if you haven't got anything, there's very, very little that they can protect. And I'm talking in terms of monetary value. So is there like an ideal scenario where you set a client, look, you're a little bit early, or good, you've come here just on time? When is the just on time bit? Or does that vary from client to client?
I would say that it varies from client to client and from business to business, because it depends on, you know, somebody could have done all the work and then the moment that they shove it out there, it almost takes off instantly.
Yeah.
We've seen this. There are no instant successes. There are no overnight successes. So that's not true. But when they do launch their thing, it takes off like crazy. And that's the time when you're wanting to protect it. I spoke to somebody the other day who hadn't shared what they were wanting to trademark, not even with their coach, because they're protective of what they've created. And I applaud that, because that's one way of keeping it secure. If you do not share the exact name of whatever thing it is that you've created, you're keeping it safe and nobody can copy it. But the moment that you are required to put it out there and you are wanting to make money with it, then you need to at least consider, how can I best protect this? What can I do? So, and with this, you sent me a LinkedIn post this morning, and this lady, she has a registered trademark, but she was using the TM, and the TM has no protection behind it. It it kind of it just shows you that you consider this to be your trademark. It does not show people like me. I get confused when people just stick the TM on there when they actually write that they have gone through the process of registering. I wrote to her, well done you for having registered your trademark. In order to show people that it is registered, I suggest that you use the R in the circle, because otherwise you confuse people like me. I was dead confused. That was why I wrote what I wrote to you in that message to you.
Right.
But I thought, okay, let's go and read what it is that that this post is saying. And the post was saying that she had gone through the process, or somebody had done it for her. Doesn't matter. It can be that you employ me to do it for you, or it can be that you do it yourself. Just be serious about it and show the world that now it's registered, and that's when you put the R in the circle on it.
Right. So there's something I've learned today. So the TM, which you're referring to, the TM and the R,
Two different things.
Explain the difference.
The TM, just if you were to put TM next to your name, you would say to me, or I would read it as you wanting me and everybody else to think that it's your trademark, but that you haven't registered it.
Right.
You haven't bothered spending time, money, and energy on that essential part of your business, because we're now pretending that you would use your name as your business name, right? Whereas when I see the registration symbol, I know that you've gone through the trouble, because you're only allowed to put the R on it the moment that it is actually registered.
Okay. So the R is the bona fide. You've done it.
Yes.
Got you.
The R in the circle is to show people I've taken my business seriously. I have got either somebody like Celeste to register it for me, or I've tried myself and done it, because some people do get lucky when they do that. And I say get lucky on purpose here, because there's a reason why people like me have spent such a long time on becoming specialists in it. So yes, you can get lucky and do it yourself. I do not recommend it, because people who don't know and understand about intellectual property, most of the times when they get a rejection, they do not understand why the hell they got the rejection.
Right.
I know and I understand. I have taken the time, spent the energy, spent the years learning what it is that can actually become registered as a trademark, as opposed to just throwing your shit into the machine and trying to see if it sticks. I will never do that. I will never just take it and throw it into the machine and see if it sticks. If I have doubts, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you to your face, Dave, don't waste money on that. It's bullshit, and it's going to waste your time, money, and energy.
Right. Okay. Which
if you insist on doing it, I will say, okay, listen, you can either do it on your own, or you can buy my DIY registration blueprint, because that will still guide you a little bit better than if you did it on your own. However, if you want to make absolutely sure, let me do it for you.
Yeah. Okay. Which is great advice to give to people that are watching this. You know, it's a lot of people will try and do things their way first, like you say, where they go, well, I don't want to employ someone because I don't want them to know my business, or I think I could do it myself by Googling. Here we go, using that phrase again. But it's but the smarter way, and it's the way I would go, would be to get someone who knows exactly what to do. Because if you have a burst water pipe and you're not a plumber, the best thing to do is get a plumber to fix it, because you won't be able to fix it. The plumber will.
And also, fact of the matter is, the money that you spend and put into the trademark registration system does not come back to you. That's why I keep saying that you are wasting time, money, and energy because you will not get the money back. The time you've spent on it is also valuable because you have a business and you could be doing things that could be generating you income in that time. So that time is lost. And the energy, because you get so fucking frustrated because you can't do it and you don't understand why.
Yeah.
But I want this to be my trademark and I don't understand why not. Well, ask me, because I'm here. I'm the specialist. I know how things work. I know what is required.
So,
And as I keep saying, not everything can or should be registered as a trademark, because as I read that little snippet before, there was a TM and there were R in the circle. And you have to, when you're actually talking about grand IPR, I ought to say every single time registered trademark. I know I don't.
Yeah.
But I do it when I write it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you don't understand why your trademark gets rejected, then chances are, if you do it a second time, you're going to waste more money. You're going to waste more time. You're going to waste more energy. It's like hitting your head against the wall and expecting a different, or doing the same thing and expect a different outcome.
Different outcome.
You can't. That's the clinical definition of insanity. So don't do that. Do something intelligent and contact somebody like me. It doesn't have to be me. It can be somebody else. I don't mind about that. But just get a specialist to help you.
Yeah.
Like if you needed your heart operating on, you wouldn't dig in with a spoon.
It does make complete sense. Do you know if we've got any questions before we sort of wrap things up?
There was a question about AI, and the question hasn't shown up in here. I wrote to the person in question to please show up and ask the questions live. I was able to see it when I went to LinkedIn beforehand, but I think, if I remember correctly, it was to do with whether or not things that are created with AI has intellectual property. And to some extent it does, but to make sure that you can claim it as yours, if it's something that's written with the chat GPT, edit it so that it gets your thumbprint still on it, so that you can claim that intellectual property and the copyright. If it's an image that is created, I don't know, to be fair, because intellectual property, where did that come from? That was weird. And to some extent it does, but to make sure that you can claim it as yours, that's written with the chat GPT, edit it so that it gets your thumbprint still on it, so that you can claim that intellectual property and the copyright. If it's an image that is created, I don't know, to be fair, because what's happening? What's happening? It's like there's a loop and you're repeating what I've just said. Sure that you can claim it as yours. That's written with the chat GPT. And then it gets your thumbprint still on it, so that you can claim that intellectual property and the copyright. If it's an image that is created, have you created some sort of loop?
No.
Did you register what I said? What's going on?
I don't know.
That was really bizarre.
I know the screen's frozen. Well, shall we wrap this up for now and carry this on? It was
really peculiar because all of what I had just said got fed back to me, and it felt really strange.
Weird.
Yeah. Anyway, we've been waffling on for an hour and nearly 20 minutes now, so
okay. Well,
let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap things up, and then we can catch up with the other bits that we were talking about earlier offline.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for watching this live stream, and I will see you next Tuesday, where we will talk about something different, and it will be a recorded session. Just so you know, Dave and I are going to record a session and air that on the 7th. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.